each failure only fueling her resentment. Then one day I went home early. I hadn't been sleeping well for a few nights and I was extremely tired, so I planned on taking a nap. Hours later, I woke up coughing, my throat burning. Smoke billowed through our bedroom door, thick and black, stinging my eyes and filling my lungs. I stumbled out of bed, disoriented, barely able to breathe. Flames danced along the walls in the hallway, turning our cozy home into a blazing trap. Somehow I made it out, collapsing on the lawn just as our neighbor, Mrs. Perkins, called for emergency services. Hi, my name is Lisa, and I was incredibly happy when I met Charles. And after we got engaged, all I could do was look forward to him being my husband. However, there was a major snag. When I married Charles, I knew his mother was intense. But nothing could have prepared me for the living nightmare that Kiki, my mother-in-law, would become. You see, my mother-in-law had 2 children, Charles and Sarah, and she did virtually everything with Charles. They were very close, so when I started dating Charles, she saw me as a threat. She thought I would take her son away from her, or that he would love her less so. From there on, she hated me. Charles and I had a small, sweet wedding, and I remember how she refused to sit down, instead lingering near the back, scowling while also sobbing as if she were watching her son's funeral rather than his wedding. I thought she would come around, but instead, the minute we said, "I do," she seemed determined to undo us. The first time I knew Kiki was actively trying to sabotage our relationship was during our honeymoon. We were in Paris on a beautiful river cruise when Charles's phone buzzed nonstop. It was Kiki, calling, texting, even emailing, saying there was an emergency with the family finances. He tried ignoring her, but after her 13th call in 20 minutes, he answered.
Mom, what's going on?
Oh, thank God, Charles. I thought you'd left me for good. We need you back home, sweetie. There's something wrong with your father's accounts. It's urgent.
Mom, there shouldn't be anything wrong with the accounts. Dad had them set up perfectly before he passed away. What is so urgent?
I just need to speak to you.
I can't talk right now, Mom.
Charles sighed, muting the phone and rolling his eyes at me. He was very annoyed with his mother, but he was trying his best not to let it ruin our honeymoon. He unmuted his phone and spent over 40 minutes talking to her.
It's just her way of getting attention. She feels threatened by you, obviously.
She called you 13 times. Maybe it really is urgent. I doubt she would interrupt our honeymoon for something too small. It wasn't. Later that night, Charles's uncle called him to apologize, saying there was no emergency. But Kiki had already soured our first evening in Paris. That was only the beginning. When we returned from our honeymoon, Kiki's behavior escalated. At every family gathering, she'd casually mention other women Charles used to date, staring at me the entire time as if to say, he could have done so much better. In fact, she would constantly mention how they were such amazing people and how she missed most of them. Then, there was the time she tried to set him up with Jessica, a friend's daughter, at a family barbecue, introducing her as his potential future. Charles laughed it off. He thought she was joking and that it was a giant prank, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than casual cruelty. One evening, Charles and I were at home, having a quiet night in, when Kiki dropped by unannounced. She strolled in without even a greeting, her eyes scanning the room with a frown. We had just finished eating. She sneered at the lasagna leftovers.
You know, Charles, Jessica would make a wonderful cook for you. She studied in Italy. Anything that she would make would taste like authentic Italian cuisine, unlike whatever that is.
Mom, Lisa is an amazing cook, and this was a delicious meal. Why are you here, and why are you bringing up Jessica?
Just looking out for your best interests. Are you sure this is the life you want, honey? I mean, you could have more.
Kiki, Charles, and I are happy together. I can assure you that he is the best thing to have ever happened to me.
Oh, I know. I'm sure you think you're happy. It doesn't take much to make simple people happy.
That was Kiki. She would flip-flop between openly insulting me and just subtly digging and sowing doubt. And Charles, bless him, always brushed it off. But it was wearing me down. I was finding it harder and harder to just let it slide. One day, I caught Kiki talking to Charles in the kitchen when she thought I was out.
She's not right for you, Charles. She's not one of us. You could do so much better. Surely you can see what I mean.
Mom, can you please stop it? I love Lisa.
Yes, but for how long? Can't you see what she's doing to you?
Doing to me? Lisa is an amazing person, and I don't get why you refuse to give her a chance.
I won't give up until you see the light.
I wanted to barge into the room and defend myself, but I chose to wait until Kiki left. After she did, I spoke to Charles and we both spoke about how his mother's actions were wearing us down. Neither knew of a way out of this situation. On one hand, Kiki was being an obnoxious bitch, and on the other hand, she was still Charles' mother, and after his father passed away years ago, she was all he had left. There were many other family members, of course, but she was still his one and only mother. And on it went, her attempts to divide us growing more creative, more desperate, each failure only fueling her resentment. Then one day I went home early. I hadn't been sleeping well for a few nights and I was extremely tired, so I planned on taking a nap. Hours later, I woke up coughing, my throat burning. Smoke billowed through our bedroom door, thick and black, stinging my eyes and filling my lungs. I stumbled out of bed, disoriented, barely able to breathe. Flames danced along the walls in the hallway, turning our cozy home into a blazing trap. Somehow I made it out, collapsing on the lawn just as our neighbor, Mrs. Perkins, called for emergency services. The fire department arrived in time to save the structure of the house, but it was gutted inside and everything we owned was either charred or smoke damaged. I remember sitting in the ambulance wrapped in a blanket, coughing so hard my chest hurt. Charles had rushed home when Mrs. Perkins called him and let him know what was happening. He was by my side, his face pale with fear. Both of us were so confused. We desperately wanted to know what had caused the fire. After all, it wasn't like we owned a lot of things that would be major fire hazards. There were no fireplaces, and it was a cool day outside, so no need to have the furnace on. So what caused the fire? A few days later, Mrs. Perkins came over, a grim expression on her face.
Lisa, I have something you need to see. I only just discovered this when I checked the recent recordings.
She showed me the footage from her doorbell camera. My heart stopped as I watched Kiki, dressed in a black coat and gloves, walking up to our house. She carefully doused the front porch in what looked like gasoline, then lit a match and tossed it. The fire roared to life, and she scurried away, glancing back only once before disappearing from view. Oh my God, Kiki tried to kill me. I can't believe it. Fueled by a fury I'd never known, I went to the police. I showed them the video, and within hours, they had a warrant out for her arrest. But Kiki, ever the defiant one, refused to go quietly. When they arrived at her house, she tried to run, bolting out the back door and making it to the garden before they caught her. The officer tased her, bringing her down with a shout, her body convulsing as she fell to the ground. The image of her, shocked and humiliated, should have been satisfying. But it wasn't enough. I couldn't let Kiki's actions be forgotten or brushed aside by the family. So, over the next few days, I made sure everyone knew the full story. I gathered Charles's relatives and played them the footage, explaining how she had tried for years to drive a wedge between Charles and me, and when that failed, she had resorted to arson, fully intending to kill me in my sleep. Charles' sister Sarah burst into tears. His cousin Peter looked horrified. Even Charles' uncle, a man of few words, shook his head. None of them could believe what I told them, but they couldn't deny the evidence. Kiki wasn't exactly a career criminal, so once the police brought her down to the station, she confessed to what she had done, mostly because she was disappointed that she had failed. The judge that was assigned to her case tried to figure out if she was remorseful for what she did, but she clearly was not. As a result, the judge sentenced her to 14 years in prison for attempted murder. She was so angry when she heard the sentence that she turned beet red and went silent and ground her teeth. The smile on my own face was massive, though. After that, Kiki became a ghost to the family. No one wanted anything to do with her. Not a single letter, call, or visit came her way while she was in prison. When she eventually did get out, it was to a life without any family. Even her friends had distanced themselves, repelled by the woman who had tried to destroy her son's happiness and nearly murdered her daughter-in-law. Charles and I rebuilt our home and moved on, but the scar of what Kiki had done remained. I sometimes wondered if she ever felt any regret, if, alone in her cell, she thought about the love she'd sacrificed, the family she'd lost. But if she did, I'd never know. And honestly, I didn't care. I later heard while in prison, Kiki was restricted from many activities and jobs because the guards saw her as unstable and were concerned about what she might do if she had access to certain tools. They worried she might start another fire, which led to her becoming very isolated. At one point, she felt so alone and hopeless that she attempted suicide, but she was stopped. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.